Okay, it's time to start up our business. This one's going to be a really fun lesson. It's going to be a huge one. We're going to have a lot of action, a lot of activities involved in this. So you might have to pause alongside this lesson. You're going to be working alongside it. So don't sit back and get too comfortable because we're getting to work right away here. So let's get started. So my goal today for you is to accomplish the important steps to getting your business started. After this lesson, after this, whether it takes you all day, a couple days, you need to refer back. This lesson, after this is done and you've completed all these activities, you'll be able to officially call yourself an entrepreneur. You'll officially be started. All right, so that's my goal for you today, to have your business started. So here's what we're going to accomplish together here. Number one, choosing your business idea. So we've looked at some examples, we looked at some inspiration. We're going to get down to the practical steps here and actually choose an idea. Next, we're going to decide on a name for your business. After that, we're going to set up your company email and your cloud storage. Then we're going to determine your phone number and your phone system. And then we're going to end off by registering your business. We're going to go through that process. So you ready to jump into this? Hope you're excited. All right, so let's choose a business idea. Let's think about the customer. What's something homeowners don't want to do themselves? As you can see from some of the examples we've shown you so far to hopefully inspire you, there's all kinds of options that you have. I think there's a list of 50. We're going to go through some of those examples again, but there's all kinds of options. But when we want to simplify it, we want to think, what is something that homeowners don't want to do themselves? What is something they would really, really prefer not to do themselves? And that's the opportunity that we can step in and offer that service for them. So if you remember, we went through a pretty long list of potential options. You're going to have access to this, so I'm not going to say them all to you, but we have a very long list. There's a lot of great options here. These are basically all the services that we could think of that are around the home. There's all kinds of them. There's probably even more that we haven't even included here, but there's a lot of services, as you can tell. These are all great options, and these are existing businesses. These are proven industries. Some are more mature than others, but these are existing businesses, so there's actually services out there for each of these already. These aren't things that we've made up out of thin air. These are actual businesses that we've researched and made sure that there's actual businesses operating like that. So that means that there's probably some online content for every one of these services that can help us decide if we want to choose that service to operate our business. All right, so it's time to narrow it down. Again, we went through a lot of examples, so we want to narrow this down. Let's talk about some strategies here. So here's some basic criteria for a good idea. Number one is low cost to starting up. We want something that doesn't have a huge investment cost in terms of the equipment that we need to buy to actually get off the ground. We want to limit or reduce the amount we spend before we actually launch, because now we're ready to go. We want to get our first customer. In that first couple days, we're probably going to get our first few customers. So we want to think about how we can just avoid spending money until we've actually made some money, and then we can reinvest that money afterwards and grow our equipment, get better equipment, go on from there. Next thing is low skill and experience requirements. So we want to choose something that we don't actually need to have training. We don't need a college education to actually complete that service. We want something that is low skilled, so no experience, and something that we can watch a couple of YouTube videos. We could try it out ourselves, just some basic supplies, and we can figure it out pretty quickly. And lastly, we want something with low barriers to entry. We don't want anything that's regulated. So for example, if we look at gas appliances, so if we look at, if we were looking at barbecue repair services, what comes to mind for me, which is something that we were actually restricted from doing as a barbecue cleaning company that didn't have our gas certification. So if you want to look in, as you're, thinking of cool ideas around the home, and maybe you choose from one of these services on this list, you want to think about what the barriers of entry are. Most don't have any barriers to entry, but there are some that do, and we want to make sure that there's nothing that we actually had to go to school for, we need to do online certification for, we need to do any sorts of things like that. We want something with no barriers to entry or low barrier to entry, so something that we don't need to get certified for. All right, so there's a little assessment that I've made up here. It's called the S.R.M assessment, Self-Resource Market. So the first thing we want to look at is analyzing ourselves. What are our current skills from our previous work experience? So think about your job last summer or throughout high school. What kind of jobs did you have? Maybe you did a lot of chores around your house. Maybe you grew up on a farm and you were pretty handy. There's a lot of backgrounds that we come from. So think about what your current skills are and think about what you've done in the past that might be relevant to your business today. Also, you want to think about what you're passionate about. You're probably not going to start a summer business that you're super passionate about, but maybe it relates to one of your passions that could be down the road. So, a lot of people that I've chatted about who've started car cleaning businesses were super passionate about cars. They loved They were really big car people. I'm not a huge car person, but I have a lot of friends that are. And so starting a car detailing business was a way for them to be around expensive cars, being around that atmosphere and getting comfortable around cars, and then just using the experience to learn more about cars. So there might be relevance there, but again, don't let that stand in your way. You don't need to find a service that you're super passionate about. But if there is, potential passions or potential hobbies that you're interested in, this could be a great way to sort of enter that realm and get experience in that area. Lastly, what are your physical abilities, and do you have any constraints? So you might be someone who's very strong, very athletic, and someone that's very used to using their body. Maybe typical summer jobs that you've had were outdoor labor jobs, so you're very comfortable with heavy lifting, very comfortable in that setting. Or maybe you're someone who's the opposite, someone who doesn't have any labor experience, doesn't want to necessarily do anything that's going to be super physical straining. Maybe you have injuries that you need to worry about, bad knees, bad hands. These are all things that you want to factor in when you're choosing your service, because again, we are doing a service, we are working with our hands, so we want to make sure that we're actually physically able to do it. All right, next thing is your resources. So these are the resources that give you the most essential to your operating your business. So the first and foremost is probably going to be having a vehicle. You pretty much need to have a vehicle if you're going to be operating your summer business. For me, I use my mom's vehicle, so using a parent's vehicle is definitely a good option. You don't need to buy a vehicle if your parents are kind enough. We'll talk about some ways that you can make that arrangement with them. You can compensate your parents. You can work around their schedule. You can offer some additional things to help your chances of securing the vehicle for at least enough time to actually operate your business. Another resource that you need to think about is your actual storage. So do you have somewhere where you can actually store your equipment? You are going to need some space for that. So do you have a garage at your house at home, maybe your student house? Do you have some space to store your equipment? And are your parents or is your landlord okay with you storing your supplies and equipment there? And do you have ways to take care of your supplies and equipment? So do you have a hose? You can wash down, clean your supplies, and things like that. And then lastly, what supplies and equipment do you already have? So maybe in your parents' garage, they do a lot of work around the home and they're willing to let you use some of their existing things. So if you're starting a landscaping business or somewhat a business within the landscaping industry, you might be able to work out an arrangement to use some of the, your grass clippers, your lawnmower would be awesome, different things like that related to your service. So maybe take an assessment of your attic, of your shed, of your garage. What do you have available to you? And lastly, you want to look at the market. So how many potential customers are there in your area, and what does the competitive market look like? We'll chat a little bit more about how to determine the size of your market in terms of analyzing the market here. So I took an example here, my hometown, Oakville, Ontario, Canada, and the most recent census data was a couple of years back, so it was in 2016. And if we look at the actual breakup of the population, so I put the reference link here. There's actually a lot of data that you sift through. You can see all kinds of information, but I focused on the households. So if we looked at Oakville's population, again, at the time, it's 193,000 people. And then I broke that up to total private dwellings because most of our customers for our home service business are going to live in private dwellings. They're not going to live in condos or apartments or things like that. So there's 66,000 private dwellings. Of those private dwellings, there's 40,000 of them that are single detached houses. These are typically the higher income individuals, or at least middle income individuals. So that's going to be where my target market is. And then of this, there's a total private households with a family of 4. There's 15,000, just under 16,000. So that's my true market size because my target market is people with families, households with 4 people in them. So the average of 2 kids. Maybe the other opportunities. So older folks that don't live or don't have children anymore, people like that. But generally speaking, my target market is families. It's households, single detached households, private dwellings with families of on average 4 people. So that's around 16,000. That's a huge market size. When you do this analysis of your town, you might not see something this big, and trust me, do not be deterred by that. This is a huge market size. There's tons of businesses in Oakville, and there's tons of businesses that literally just operate in Oakville. So that's a massive market size. We're literally just trying to get 100, 150 customers max in this summer, maybe 200 customers if we do really well, and that's a very, very, very small percentage of that 16,000 people. So, or 16,000 actual available market for this. So that's amazing. So this is a way to determine, so you can just Google the census data from your town. So literally just looking up your town, look at the census data, and then sifting through it similarly to what I did like here, like this. And maybe you want to stop at total single detached households. Maybe that's enough to give you a gauge of the market size. And it should be somewhere around you might want to consider expanding your market if it isn't in a way that you let's say 1% of households you'd be able to track. So when I say 200 of this 16,000, that's way less. That's way less than that threshold. So you want to generally be able to get or have a market big enough that you can you're only selling a very small percentage, so less than 10% of customers you need in that within that demographic. So that's something to keep in mind of. And if you're looking at your market size, maybe you want to just stay in your small town. This might tell you that you need to go beyond that and look for a little bit larger of a market beyond just your small town. All right, so that's a way to analyze the market. And then within that, you'll do some Google searches within that market for your competitors. You can start with Google. Google will show you on Maps. If you search up directly on Maps, you can search up the service and you'll see all the companies with Google listings, and you'll see that around your area. So that's a good way to determine the actual competitors in your area and the number of competitors. So for me, I'm not going to be scared if we have some competitors. I mean, you should never be scared. You're always going to have competitors. But even if there's several competitors, there's enough to go around. There's huge market size here. There's huge market opportunity. So I'm okay if there's competitors. All right, so we put some thought into it. This was our preliminary search. We kind of looked at several different services. Maybe there's a couple that piqued your eye, piqued your interest, so you did some general research. More broadly, your self-assessment and your resource assessment kind of applies to all services, so you don't even have to think specifically about a service for that. But really, the market assessment is when we kind of narrowed down a little bit. But this, in general, this exercise was really just to think more broadly about the potential services we can offer and just looking at what we currently have, in terms of ourself, our resources, and the actual market around us where we want to operate. So now we want to get a little more specific with this. So now at this stage, I hope you put some thought into it. Maybe just pause this video and do some of these activities. You can definitely pause the video as we go. I really want you to be working alongside me here. And even if you have to come back to this video in a couple of days, or you do this over the course of a week or two, that's more than okay. But this is I'm going to move through these. I'm going to move through the sections, talk about the most important things, and this will be your general compass to go forward. So after you've done that general research, might help you to write it down. Might help you to make some notes on a on a piece of paper, on a Google Doc, or you just want to map it out in your head and just think about it generally. This isn't really entrepreneurship is great because you don't actually have to make like a formal plan. It's really just putting that thought. And if you're someone who can really keep track of all these things and balance that all in your thinking process, then by all means you don't need to write it down at this stage. But now that we're entering this stage, we're going to narrow things down. So we're going to choose three potential ideas that you'd like to consider after you've done that. So now you're probably going to want to do some writing. You do want to make some notes because these are three serious contenders for the service that you're going to choose. So for each idea, consider the following. These are leading questions that I want you to answer to yourself or write them down. I would highly recommend you write them down. So think about who your competitors are. So how long have they been around? So when you Google, so let's say I want to do car cleaning service, Matt's Car Cleaning. It's actually an example we're going to go through this program. But let's say we want to do a car cleaning service, mobile car cleaning, and we're going to locate it in Oakville. So we want to search that up in terms of what's already out there in comparison. So we're going to look up Oakville auto detailing, Oakville car cleaning, Oakville mobile cleaning. Like try a couple of different search queries here, try a couple of different options and see who your competitors are. Make a couple of notes about your main competitors. So really you want to see just the serious competitors. You might see the odd one here and there. And how you can tell if they're a serious competitor is based on their Google listing. When you see those listings, you're going to see all the information. The ones that don't have a legit Google listing, like Google's just made one for them because Google will do that. And how you know that is if they don't have a website or any contact information on that Google listing. You'll know that that's just a dummy Google listing that Google's put up there to help really just show, I guess, really help Google's platform to be the go-to for all the different options. But really those competitors aren't as serious. They're probably a one-man contractor. They probably don't pose a serious, you don't want to learn from them, and they don't pose a serious threat to your main customer base. So doing a general Google search, searching your service, searching a couple of terms, and then look at how long they've been around. And if you see the ones that have been established since 1970, since 1980, and you're thinking they've been around forever, like how am I going to compete with them? It's actually a competitive advantage you have. The fact that they've been around forever means they're probably more likely than not stuck in their ways. Their founder is maybe even out of the business at this point. At least he or she's not involved with the day-to-day operations. there's a lot of factors that actually play to your advantage. And once, businesses, especially in home services, if they've been established over several years, there's been a ton of shifts in the market, a ton of changes that have happened recently. So these more established businesses actually have a disadvantage in terms of keeping up with these rapid changes that are going on. It's really difficult for an established business that's been around, stuck in their ways, to really adapt and become resilient to the modern day. And this is really your opportunity to take advantage. You learn from what they have out there, you learn from what they offer, you learn from what their customers say, their reviews, different things like that. But you use that to propel yourself up and take advantage of the new opportunity. So you want to see how many serious competitors there are, and then what do the online reviews say? So actually read their online reviews. Don't just look at the quantity. Don't just look at, they have 20 reviews, they have 100 reviews. Actually read what their customers have to say. Specifically read the 5 stars, so the really happy customers and what they really liked about the service, and then look at the 1 star reviews, the lowest, and see what people were really upset about. You'll probably start to see a general theme of what makes people happy and what makes people upset within that service, and you can get a feel for what opportunities you have and how much you can how you can jump over top, leapfrog them, and actually do a better job and avoid those issues when you get started. You also want to think about what's included in their offering. So check out, do they have service packages? If they're a landscaping company, what kind of landscaping do they do? How do they differentiate that? How do they separate it? This is how you can kind of see the different niches and the different niche service options that you can look at when you're first getting started. So maybe you will, compete with this big landscaping company, but you're going to do this one specific niche way better than them. You're going to conquer that niche. You're going to get more customers that way. You're going to build your identity around that. And then afterwards, you're going to use that experience and use that customer base to then expand to additional services. So see what they offer, and this is a way for you to understand what the most in-demand services are within that space. So see what see what they offer, see what they really explain on their website, and then think about like what their website looks like. How modern is it? Is it really something that you would expect to see in today's day, or is it something they've just had forever and they've never really bothered to change it? And then think, do they use social media? So have they? This is really a show of if they've kept up with the times. How big is their social media? Is it just getting started? Has it been around forever? Do they really care about their social media? Get a feel for all these things with your competitors. And then ask yourself, at the end of the day, ask yourself, would you actually feel compelled to do business with this company? So when you're really analyzing a company, getting a little bit more in depth, you're doing a lot of gathering of information. Think about how compelled you feel to do business with this company. How excited do they make you to want to get a quote, to want to give them a call, to want to email them? How do they do that? Do they do a good job? Do they do a poor job with that? And maybe focus on your best competitor, like who does it the absolute best, and think about how you can be different than them, or how you can do what they do but better. All right, so for each of your ideas, you choose 3. You have 3 in mind right now. Do this process for each of them, and you should have a pretty thorough, detailed list of jots and notes about your competitors, about what the market's like, what your first kind of your ideas of what the whole industry looks like based on this Google search. All right, so the key thing is the biggest opportunities in general when we think about our service are the ones that are the most inconvenient for people to do. So this is a general rule of thumb. It's gonna be, if you just think about it from a logical perspective, people can be more easily sold if it just makes sense to them right away. So if you present someone with the offer to do something that's easy for them to do, they already don't care to do it. When I think of an example of that, my dad really enjoys cutting his grass. He really doesn't care about cutting his grass. We don't have a ton of grass. We don't have a huge property, so it's not a big deal for him to do, and it's not an inconvenience for him to do. Whereas he hires a company to open and close his pool every year. He hires a company to do different, larger landscaping jobs. He hires companies for different specialties, but there's certain things that aren't that inconvenient for him and he actually enjoys doing, and then there's certain things that are hugely inconvenient that he doesn't enjoy to do. So think about what the opportunities are in terms of how inconvenient it is for people to do, and think of how you can add value to someone's life. We're hitting you with a lot of service opportunities here, but what I want you to think about in reality of the situation is how can you add value to that person's life? Think beyond just that service and think about just this person in general. And we're going to talk about, we're going to get more into detail about your customers. We're going to build the customer journey, the customer persona. We're going to do all those things, but start to think on the higher level how you can add value. Have that value-driven mindset. Because really, that's what all entrepreneurship is all about: is adding value to your customer's life. All right, so now the time is to make a decision on your service. At this point in time, you might want to pause the video. You might want to reflect a little bit. Maybe you want to send a message in our group. You want to send a message to the network. Maybe send a message to myself personally. You maybe want to talk it out loud. There's lots of things you can do, but this is the time, if you do feel comfortable with everything, that all the thought you've put in, is to make your decision on your service now. Choose your service. And I don't want you to dwell too much on this. Remember, it's execution is going to be the most important thing, and you can get creative, you can get innovative within no matter what service, within basically any service that you choose. All right, so this is the time to make a decision on your service. We're gonna move on here, but if you need to pause and come back, by all means do that. Okay, so now it's time to choose an awesome business name for your company. Super exciting process here, because you can really get creative with it, but it's not going to take as long as you think if you are a little bit intimidated. So we're going to jump right into this and get started. All right, so there's so many options. Where can you start? All right, so the first thing to do, I recommend, is looking out and seeing what's actually out there right now. So start off by looking up your competitors. So you did some initial competitor research. What did you see? What were the different names? Look at your own region. So, for me in Oakville, if I was starting here, I'd look in my own region. What were some of the, car cleaning businesses if I was going to start a car cleaning business? But then look to other regions. So look, in Ontario, in different cities in Ontario, and then maybe even just looking across Canada, even in the United States. You just really get inspired by all different ideas. You're going to find a lot of common, themes and common ideas around those, and you'll start to get inspired with some potential options. Also, I also recommend trying to look into non-competitors in a similar industry. So let's say, for example, you're looking at landscaping. Well, there's all different kinds of landscaping businesses. There's grass cutting, there's tree planting, gardening, hedge trimming. There's all kinds of services related to landscaping. So maybe look into other potential business ideas that are related to that and just get some ideas, get the ideas flowing. You can take some notes down, maybe get your notepad out and start jotting some ideas that you like, what you see out there right now. Next thing you can do is try using some online tools. So there's literally tools online that will create business names for you. Shopify, which is the largest e-commerce platform, I think most of us have heard of it, but if you haven't, they're a really big e-commerce platform located here in Canada, and they literally have a tool that you simply type in a keyword. So for example, if I was going to do car cleaning or auto detailing, I would type in auto or car, and they generate a massive list of potential business name ideas. The same goes for a couple of these other tools. I've tried them all out. They're all super cool. After you've done that, it's a really good idea to take some notes. You probably see a couple that you like there, and then you can use a thesaurus. So thesaurus.com is the biggest thesaurus online, and try to find synonyms, so different related words that mean the same thing, and then you can create your own unique combinations. By doing these steps, you should probably have probably at least 3, maybe 4 or 5 different names that you like that you're considering right now. All right, so keep in mind that your target customers, don't overcomplicate the name because it sounds cool or different. You got to keep your target customer in mind. Sometimes different does more harm than good. It might sound super cool to you, super unique. Maybe it's not like anything out there. But on the flip side, customers are going to see that and maybe be a little bit deterred from going with your service. If it's unclear about what you do or what industry you're in, they might not know and might not even bother clicking on you, or if they see your flyer, if they talk to you, might just not understand it. So you definitely do want to make sure that you have your customer in mind and they're at the forefront of when you're actually choosing your business name. It's not for you, it's for your customers. All right, so if you're still stuck, here are some great options to consider. First thing is your name with the service that you're offering. So let's say I'm doing car cleaning services. Well, simply putting my name, Matt's Car Cleaning Service, can be a great idea. This way, I add that personalization. People know they're relying on me. They can rely on, Matt, who's clearly the owner of the business, and someone who's going to be offering the service. So this is actually a really good way to establish some credibility and establish some trust behind your brand very early. Another option to consider is a generic name with the service you're offering. So for example, with car cleaning, call yourself the Car Guys. You have a couple guys and you clean cars, you call yourself the Car Guys or the Car Cleaners, or something along those lines. Lastly, you can do something innovative. I came up with an idea here, Automatic Shine. I don't love that idea, and I don't love the idea of doing an innovative name or doing word plays right now, unless it's something that's very easy to follow and something that's easily catchy and you won't have any issues with spelling. Think about all the times you're going to be saying your name out loud, not just in written form, and you want to make sure that that's easy to remember, easy for people to write down and not misspell if they're looking your name up. The last thing you want is someone to look up your name, spell it wrong, and go to a competitor instead. So think about that. Keep that in mind when you're choosing. These are three kind of categories that you could choose. I would suggest doing, with your name or a generic name. But if you can think of an innovative name that still makes sense, maybe Car Hero might be a little bit more of a innovative name, less generic. Could be an option. But think about that. Think about it in the sense that your customer definitely wants a clear, concise vision of who you are and what you offer. So now you got to narrow it down and pick one. So you got a lot of options. When you putting your service or putting your idea into those name generators online, you probably have just a full list of options if you didn't already have some inspiration from your competitors. But we probably have some options now, and we want to narrow it down and actually pick a name. We want to move quickly on this. We don't want to dwell on this. So we're going to just facilitate that process as quickly as possible. So again, keep it simple, make it easily understood. And then the last thing you want to do before you're actually seriously considering a name is making sure that it's not used already. This is really huge to do. And actually, from my personal experience, we actually came across this because a lot of companies, when I did my barbecue cleaning business, had similar names. So our name was Canadian Barbecue Boys, but there was also the Barbecue Guys, Barbecue Pro. There was even a smaller one guy operation with, I think he had a couple employees named Barbecue Boy. So literally just a singular version of our name. There's lots of similar names, and it happened all the time where a customer would come to us when they meant to go to one of our competitors and vice versa. It was a really inefficient system, and really differentiating ourselves would have established our brand a lot quicker. So to determine if your business name is used already, simple thing to do is just Googling the name and checking the full 2 pages of Google. Just make sure, that it should pop up when you search someone's name directly. It should pop up like right away on Google, but go through the first 2 pages. After that, you don't need to go any further. And then go on Facebook or any social media platform if you want to do more than just Facebook and search the name there too. You just want to make sure that it's definitely not taken anywhere. You definitely don't want to choose a name that's already taken. And again, you're going to lose people if they go to that person instead, especially if you're a startup and someone else already has an established business online. And then another thing you can do to be extra safe is use this tool for registered corporations in Canada. So this is actually the Canadian website. It's in beta right now, so that link might change. But the Canadian business registries, you can actually search up the name and see if it's incorporated as that name. And then as a further check that will for sure cover you if you've done all of these 4 things, would be to actually check the trademark database in Canada. So you can actually search the name, you can search variations, and you can see all the trademarks related to that. You might have a situation where your name is taken, but it's for something completely different. That happens from time to time. And the general rule of thumb for trademarks is if it's in the description, they'll say what's trademarked. And if it doesn't match the service you're offering, you're generally in the clear. But if it is something that you see expanding into, so for example, say you start the Car Guys and you realize that there's a whole set of car parts and products named the Car Guys, and that's something you see your business transitioning into, that might be something you want to avoid and maybe consider a different name, because that's something you'll be infringing directly on their trademark and you'll be restricted from selling those products ever. So keep that in mind. But it really, at the end of the day, a quick Google search and Facebook search will really typically cover you for if a name's actually taken or not. So after you've done all that, I want you to say the name. I want you to pick 1 or 2 and say them out loud. Say them a couple of times if you haven't already. You probably have, but make sure you say it a couple of times and then ask a couple others what they think about the name. Ask your parents first. Ask a couple of friends. If you can talk to more adults, maybe a teacher, a professor, anyone like that, someone in your network, and you can just mention your name and ask if they like it, if they like the sound of it, ask for their honest feedback on it, maybe present them with a few options and have them vote. Maybe you do it on your Instagram story, you post 3 options and you have them vote on which one that they want to choose. This way you can actually get more opinions on it rather than just your own. Sometimes things sound really good to us, but in reality, they're not that great. So that's a great last step before you actually pull the trigger on your name. All right, so here's the action time. You got to choose your business name. So we gave you a lot of good tips there. We gave you a process to get there. So if you need to pause, you need to go back and review, by all means do that. But we're going to move on and assume that you've chosen your business name, and we're going to go to the next step here. So now it's time to set up your company email. All right, so we're not going to overcomplicate this. There's really only 2 options you have to consider. When you're going for your email, you want to get an email with free cloud storage. So with Google, which is something most of us are familiar with, we got Google Drive. And with Microsoft Outlook, we got the Microsoft Drive as well, the Microsoft Office suite. So make sure you have an email with a cloud storage, because we're gonna have lots of files, documents, things like that, invoices, receipts, expenses, all those sorts of things. And then you also want one with a calendar, so I can link directly to your calendar, because you're gonna need that for managing your bookings and managing your schedule. So there's really only two main options. It's not really worth looking into any other options. So it's either Gmail or Microsoft. I've given you the link for both to create your account right here, or you can just Google create a Gmail account, or go on Google and search create a Microsoft email account. Either way, choose one of those, but I do want to mention that our preference here at Start Smart is Gmail, and for the rest of this program, for the documents that we share with you, it's going to be directly through the Google Drive. So we use Gmail here at Start Smart. I've always used Gmail. I think it's a phenomenal platform. I know that Microsoft is very similar. There's a lot of similar functionality, but we're going to go ahead and use Gmail for all of our communications with Start Smart in terms of documents, in terms of sharing those. But by all means, you won't be at any disadvantages if you use Microsoft Outlook. You're just going to need to put those documents manually, upload them into your Drive. So whatever you feel comfortable with. We're going to go through the Gmail, and when we do our email tutorials later on how to optimize your inbox using tools available, we're also going to use Gmail. So just keep all that in mind, but again, it's your choice what you prefer, and if you are very comfortable with Microsoft, then I would encourage you to stay with what you're comfortable with. All right, so I want you to note that later on in the program, we're going to be talking about the Gmail tools and optimize your inbox. Right now, we're not doing that. Gmail, when you create your account, and Microsoft as well, when you create your account, they'll do some walkthroughs. They'll walk you through the basics of it. But there's a lot of things that we're going to focus on later on in the course as we're running our business and making sure that we're optimizing our inbox and staying on top of things. Right now, we're simply registering. So that's the call to action right now. Create your company email account. Shouldn't take you too long, very simple, and I don't want to waste your time going through the tutorial because it's very straightforward to do. So go on Gmail, create your account, or go on Microsoft, create your account now. Pause this video. If you need to look back and go to one of those links, by all means, definitely do that, but we're going to keep going. All right, so now it's time to set up your business phone number and phone system. All right, so consider this. You'll be using your phone throughout the day for your business to take and make calls. It's going to be probably the most important tool for your business other than yourself. It's going to be your ultimate communication with your customers, the way that you're going to attract customers, take sales calls, communicate with customers throughout the day. You're going to need a phone that's reliable throughout the day for that. So it's going to be something you use often. It's going to be something that you'll need to list your phone number publicly online and on any promotional material, so any flyers, business cards, your Google listing, your website, your social media pages. You're going to have to put this number everywhere. And last thing to think about and consider is your voicemail message that you have on your phone is going to be customized for your company. You're not going to have a personal phone number anymore, a phone message anymore. It's going to be a company phone message. So these three things I want you to consider, and I bring this up because I want you to genuinely think and actually, put some thought into, are you okay with using your personal cell phone for this? I know we like to have our privacy. We like to keep our personal life separate from some of the other things that we do, business and things like that. So I want you to think, are you are okay with using your personal cell phone for this? And to give you some context, I use my personal cell phone for my business. Almost every business owner does this, and it's totally something that most of us do, if not, pretty much all of us do. But I want you to be aware of the things that can come up and things that, there's sort of some of the sacrifices you got to make if you're going to use your cell phone and your personal phone number for your business. So these are things to keep in mind. That being said, I always used my personal cell phone, and I just lived with that sacrifice. I changed my voicemail to something embarrassing. It was my company voicemail message. So it definitely was, the Canadian Barbecue Boys message. It was pretty funny to hear when people gave me a call. But people understood. People understood that I was a business owner, had my business, and I needed to do what I needed to do. But it definitely was something that was, a little bit of a nuisance at times, having customer calls when you're out with friends, having, the phone never really being able to escape from work, because the phone's always going to be a way for people to get a hold of you and contact you. So it is something you got to keep in mind, and your phone has to be ready for it. You have to have voicemail set up. You have to have a certain number of voicemails. You can't have 0 voicemails. You're going to lose out on a lot if you do that. And you're going to need a phone with a good data plan. You're going to need one that works. If you have an old phone, it's been giving you issues, you're going to need a phone that works and that's reliable. It's a very important tool for your business. So if you're not willing to use your personal phone, I understand. Would recommend using your personal phone. We're really talking about having a shoestring budget, doing things as low cost as possible when first starting up. But if you aren't comfortable, there's two options you can consider. Number one is purchasing a company cell phone. So you're gonna have an additional upfront cost and a monthly expense for your business with this. But if it's really worth it to you and you're confident that you're going to make a lot of revenue, it's going to justify the cost, or maybe your phone right now is super unreliable, you need a new phone and you're just going to make it fully a company phone, fair enough. So that's your first option, company cell phone. Second option is to use a cloud-based calling software. So these are something that are very popular. Almost every company actually uses them, whether we're using cell phones or landline phones. But cloud-based calling software is powered by the internet or powered by 3G or 4G, any data. So there's a monthly cost, and often they have a certain limit of minutes on their plans. So they have a monthly cost plus pay per minutes, and then they do have some sneaky under the table costs. The costs do add up. It is quite expensive, but it's not crazy expensive. It's probably going to be roughly the same for your business. It'd probably be roughly the same as what it would cost for your regular cell phone plan. And so you have to consider, do you have the data on your cell phone for this? Because every single call that comes to you is going to be using data. That's a lot of data and a lot of Wi-Fi bandwidth that you're gonna be using. If if you're at home, it's fine. But if it's if you're on the road, which you can be on the road more often than not, it's gonna use a lot of data. So you have to have a really good data plan. You're probably gonna need unlimited data, if not at least 15 gigs of data. And last thing is, you want to think about how you're going to operate in low signal areas. So with these, with cloud-based calling software, it relies on a good internet connection. If you don't have good internet connection and you're unreliable on your calls, the calls are falling through, you're having all kinds of technical difficulties always when you're managing your customers, this might be something you want to factor in, because you might actually be losing business that way. And let's say you're losing a couple of customers that were a couple $100 each. Well, maybe that justifies the full cost of a company phone. Or maybe you just want to avoid that altogether and you're willing to make the sacrifice in using your personal cell phone. So these are some options you have to consider. Each come with additional costs and things to factor in. I just want you to think about all your options. I want those to be presented. At the end of the day, my personal recommendation is using your personal cell phone and using your personal cell phone number. You got to wear your business on your sleeve. You got to be proud of it. You got to be confident with it. And you got to be ready at all times to take your calls and deal with your business matters. That's the reality of being an entrepreneur. All right, so if you're in a business partnership, I need to mention this because you're going to need to determine one person who's going to list their number and be the go-to company phone. This is a big decision. This is not an easy decision because pretty much every customer interaction is going to be fed through this person. So this person is literally going to be the person responsible for customers. They're going to be responsible probably for most of the sales, most of the customer service, even just collections, even a lot of things to do with the customer, which is a lot of our business. So you have to think deeply about what the other person is going to be in charge of to ensure that there's going to be an equal distribution of work. Especially if you're in a 50-50 partnership, or if you have three of you and you have 33-33-33 split, you're really going to have to think deeply about who's going to take on this responsibility, because that's a serious responsibility that they're going to have. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that no partner is taking on more work than another. So if one partner is doing this, you have to chat this out and talk this, have a serious conversation about what the other partner is going to do to justify one person having this. But at the end of the day, you have to choose one. There has to be one person that takes care of this. You can't have multiple company phone numbers. It creates all kinds of issues. We actually did that. We ended up having like 4 different company phone numbers in our second year, I think, and it just caused all kinds of issues. No one knew who to call. So you need to have one. And yeah, so this person, choose the person that's going to be on the ball with their phone. So someone who is okay with being on their phone or being at least ready to take calls, all the time. If it's someone who goes up to their cottage every weekend and doesn't have cell phone signal and stuff like that, that's probably not the right person to choose. You need someone who is reliable with their phone and someone who can communicate professionally on a consistent basis. So for me, I took on that responsibility. I loved working with customers. That was my favorite part of the business. So for us, it was a no-brainer. I was a really good customer guy. My business partner was more of on the operations side. So we had a good mix there and we had a great fit. So for me, it was no regrets, but I did, at the end of the day, when I sold my business, I did have to get a new phone number. I had to get a new phone number. It was something I had to give up because it became a business asset. So all these things you want to keep in mind. And yeah, it's not, at the end of the day, it's a decision you got to make. I just want to present all the options that you have available to you. But again, we want to keep it practical, keep it low cost, and not think too far into the future. So I would say use your personal cell phone. So here's the action: choose a company phone number and a system. If you're choosing your own cell phone, that's your system. And if you're using your phone number, then you don't have to do anything other than declare that this is going to be your phone number. Make that decision now. If not, do some research on company business phones. You might be able to get a decent option. You might get a decent deal right now. Maybe you want to get a lower end phone, something that's maybe not the latest and greatest model, and it might be cheaper. Might get a free, a zero cost phone on a plan. Might be worth it to you. And if you're going to look up cloud-based calling software, just doing some Google searching. We use cloud-based calling in our later years, and our cloud-based software that we used, it was called Ooma. It was called Ooma Office, OOMA Office. The reason I'm not putting in these in these slides because I don't want you to consider this option. I think it's the worst option you can choose. But if you do really need to do it, look up some cloud-based calling softwares and make your decision there. For us, it was something we did after we had over double digits employees and we had a sizable business. We need to have an office. We need to have an office phone. That's when we made that decision. We didn't make that before that in our first year or even our second year. All right, so now it's time to register your business. So the last step of this process in this video. So at this point, hopefully and you're actually going to have completed all the other processes that we've talked, or all the other things in this video we've talked about. So you have to know your business service, what you do. You're going to need to know your business name. You're going to need to know a contact number for your business. You have to have an email for your business. And you're also going to have to, in order to register your business, you're going to have to get some other information, including your social insurance number, your business address, so you can declare that as your home address, wherever you're going to be operating out of. So that's totally fine. You need to know a couple of things to register your business. Those are probably the two biggest things: your address and your SIN number, as well as all the other things that we've talked about so far in this section. So if you haven't done those things yet, you haven't finished that, finish that first before we think about registering our business. All right, so what's your business structure? This is something you got to determine before you're registering your business. So there's 3 different types of structures. These are the 2 basic ones. There's a sole proprietorship, which is just an unincorporated business that's owned by one person. That, if you're in this program right now solo, that's going to be your go-to option when you first get started. I'm going to talk about incorporating, but this is really the best place to start. It's the cheapest, lowest cost, doesn't complicate anything. Really, it's just you declaring that you have a business, and you don't need to incorporate or get any other documents other than your master business license. So for more information here, we got the link. We're going to share that link with you guys. That's going to give you all the information about sole proprietorship and as it relates to the tax code in Canada. And so you can get all the information you need right on there. I'm not going to play Government of Canada right now. I'm going to let them feed you that information. Other option is partnership. So this is when you have multiple partners, 2 people. So in this case, each partner contributes money, labor, property, or skills to a partnership. In return, each partner is entitled to a share of the profits or losses of the business. Business profits or losses are usually divided among the partners based on the partnership agreement. So if you have a partnership, you need to register your partnership, obtain your master business license, just like your sole proprietorship, but you're also going to need to craft a partnership agreement. These you can find online. You can find a basic template. You don't need to create a massively complicated partnership agreement. And you guys can also, if there's 2 of you, you can also choose to put together a temporary agreement right now that just covers the basis points, has everything that you need in terms of just getting set up. It could be a 1-page partnership agreement, and then you can maybe have the goal that this partnership agreement expires, or even just in the contract you could say this partnership agreement expires at the end of 2021, at which case we need to create a new one. So you maybe invest in a better partnership agreement. Maybe there's some lawyers that you want to get involved, or maybe you just want to incorporate so you're no longer a partnership. Either way, you can just get a template online. Keep it simple at the start. Make sure it just covers your basis points. And in a quick Google search of templates, you'll find a bunch. All right, so the other business structure type, the third type, is a corporation. So corporation is a legal entity and separate and it's distinct from its owners. So really what that means is that corporation is separate from yourself in terms of your assets and liabilities. So a corporation has limited liability, which means that you as a shareholder are entitled to some of the profits, the dividends, and the appreciation of value of the corporation, but you're not personally liable for the company's debts. So that protects you as you get larger, as you scale. If any major issues happen with your business and you have to go bankrupt, for example, you don't have to bankrupt yourself. You can just bankrupt the business. That's going to have consequences on your own credit score, your own ability to get a mortgage, your own ability to get any sort of loan later on. Don't get me wrong, but it's not going to affect what you currently have, where you're currently standing. So that's something you want to look at later on. This is the link right here that shows you the whole breakup of how the tax code works with corporations and what it's all about. But that's something that you typically don't do when you first get started. It's just not necessary. It's not going to add any value or benefits for you right now. There's just no need for it. All right, so when you first start up, incorporating your business is not necessary. As I said, it's just something that's not going to, it's something that costs money and it doesn't actually do anything different for your business. All right, so how to register your business. I hope you've thought about your business structure. You're probably thinking sole proprietorship. That's typically any student summer business, us included. I was a partnership, so I had a business partner, but any summer business, you're a sole proprietor or partnership typically until at least the second year. So register your business name with the provincial government. You don't have to do this at the federal level. So every province just has their own registration, their own website. So if you just Google your province, Ontario business registration, this is what's going to come up. And so basically what you do in Ontario is you're going to be taken, on this page, you're going to be taken to registering your business name. When you register your business name, you're going to be taken through the process of getting your master business license. Your master business license is something that you need in order to open up a business bank account, which is something we're going to do later on. So this is the first step to getting started. You need to obtain your business name. There are penalties if you don't register your business name. It's going to cost a little bit of money. I think the last time I checked, it was $80. And once you've done that, you're set. You're registered. You don't have to do anything else as of right now. You're registered and you're officially off the ground. Let's say you want to take the corporate route. Let's say for some reason, one reason or another, you've decided corporation is right for you. So for all the information here, I put another link here for how to start your corporation. This page has everything that you need for starting corporation in Ontario. And the easiest and cheapest way to incorporate, so you're always going to need to get a third party involved. And typically that's a lawyer. So actually nowadays there's a lot of online options, and for what we're looking for in terms of our first corporation, a small business that's not going to do a crazy amount of revenue, and it's really just going to have 1, 2, maybe 3 revenue streams. It really makes sense to keep it simple. And so if we're keeping it simple, we can actually go with this. So it's a website called Owner. And I believe they charge $300 to incorporate your business. They'll take care of the whole process, essentially, with the government. They're the intermediary. They'll register you as a corporation. You'll get your minute book. You'll get your articles of incorporation. You'll get your shares. You get all the paperwork that you need through them. Very easy process. It can be done very quickly. And for the last time I checked, you don't even have to interact with anyone directly in order to do that. All right, so the action now is to register your business. I hope I provide you with enough information here. If you do have any questions, definitely go and send a message in the group, send a message on the platform, send a message to myself. More than happy to make sure that you get set up properly, especially in these early stages when we're still getting used to being an entrepreneur. There's a lot of things coming at us a little bit quickly. This is how it works. We're gonna move past this part of the process quickly because we don't want to dwell too long on these early stages. We got a lot of work ahead of us. We want to move quickly. Don't be overthinking your decisions right now. Make the best decision based on the information we presented, based on your own intuitions, and move forward. Feel good about it. All right, so congratulations. You're officially an entrepreneur. That's something you pat yourself on the back for. You've taken a huge step. You've registered your business. You're officially an entrepreneur. Guess what? You are a business owner. That's massive, and I'm really excited. I remember when I first registered my business, I was in the basement of my parents' house on my computer with my business partner, and we jumped up of joy. We high-fived each other. It was one of the happiest feelings when we actually pulled the trigger and we officially became entrepreneurs. That was huge. It was a really exciting moment. I want you to be excited right now. You deserve it. You've made it pretty far already. You've made it. We haven't even started doing the fun stuff yet, but we've made it pretty far in terms of the back end. What we need to do to actually get our business off the ground. All right, I want to leave you with a quote here before we finish off. So whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. It's a quote from Henry Ford. It's one of my favorite quotes when it comes to entrepreneurship. And so this is something I want you to keep in mind as we move forward through the next stages. If you're having some difficulty right now, whether it's coming up with a service idea, business name, registering your business, determining your business structure, that's okay. But thinking that you can and staying motivated and staying forward looking is going to be a huge asset to you. This quote could not be more true. There's so many times that we're tested through our entrepreneurial journey. Right now, it might be a little bit challenging for you just making that transition. Transitioning into being an entrepreneur is a huge transition. It's a huge leap. It's something that we've never thought about before in terms of that mindset, in terms of the pace of it. We're going pretty quickly. We're moving fast. But whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're usually right. So always say you can do it. There's a reason you're in this program. We're going to get through it together. We're going to keep going. And remember, we're always here for your support. We're always here to lift you up. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. But I hope that you've registered your business and you're excited to get on to the next stage. All right, so let's do it.